Okay, part 2 about my education. Yeah, the damn phone keeps ringing, and it was my mother. Anyway, high school, 10th grade, 1999-2000 school year. How lucky was I, you know? How lucky was I? I was a sophomore, and I was experiencing the transition from one millennium to the next. The classes by sophomore year were a little easier. They were just a little easier. Algebra for one. That was probably the easiest, algebra class I had ever taken. It was Algebra 1A. I averaged an A the entire year. And that was unheard of, even for someone like me. But my grades were good all around my sophomore year. I made no C's, D's, or F's sophomore year. That's how good I was. I mean, then there was my junior year. I made 2 C's the entire year, but no D's or F's. But that was a year, my junior year was probably one of my tougher years because I had to deal with my younger brother attending high school with me. And, of course, his first year, I considered him to be nothing more than a burden on me. Like, why do I have to put up with you, Christopher? Why are we going to the same school? And that just made things tough. But, there were some bright spots. Pretty much every friend that I had amassed up to that point, pretty much every friend that I made, even those who were a grade ahead, they were all at the same school with me at the same time. That was the only year I could experience that. I also met a few people who were just outright fucking crazy. They were. They tried to get me to join their little neo-Nazi group. And, trust me, I'll elaborate on that more in a minute. But I met probably one of the coolest teachers that I would ever have. An American history teacher with a very famous name. Mr. Bill Hicks. Yes, like the late comedian. Now, Mr. Hicks was like probably the best teacher that I could have had throughout all of high school. He became like a big brother figure to me. Because I had some troubles, and I was looking for somebody to talk to, somebody to relate to, and I felt that he related to me the best out of anyone. Even nobody my age could help me out, because they were probably just as lost in life as I was. So, I had my ups and downs with this teacher, but, by the end of the year, I told him how grateful I was to have him as a teacher, and I said, see you next year. I mean, I knew I wouldn't have any of his classes senior year, but I knew that I would be seeing him next year just because I figured maybe he'll play another role in my academic life. And he did. So, 2000, 2001, that was junior year. We transitioned, and, summer school before senior year, I took economics. I took economics for 2.5 weeks. And I barely passed that course with a C because, you know, I'm 16 years old. I'm not yet even 17. I don't know a single thing about economics, nor did I care. I still don't know much of anything about economics, 10 years on. But it's just that I just wanted to get the course over with and start my senior year. And I took what's called the FCAT when I was in 10th grade, but I failed that. That's one of those standardized tests that if you take it and pass, you get to graduate. If you take it and fail, well, you keep trying until you finally pass and graduate, 6 years later. But anyway, I was fortunate enough to be able to take a test that was in its final years called the HSCT, or High School Competency Test. I took that. It was 2 parts, reading and math. I passed both parts with scores of over 700, combined 1414, and that was what enabled me to graduate. My brother had to take and pass the FCAT in order for himself to graduate 2 years later. But, so, okay, I covered that. And now, senior year. I qualified for dual enrollment, which meant that I could go to my high school for a part of the day and then go to a tech school for another part of the day. So the first 3 hours of the day, I went to a tech school, Winter Park Tech, for computer electronics. Why I chose this, I don't know. I just thought it was the most masculine thing I could do. Turns out I knew nothing about computers, and I just lost interest. I lost the desire after 5 weeks, so I dropped out, and I took a bunch of filler courses, one of which was driver's ed. Yeah, and I passed the course, but I refused to take the actual road driving test, car driving. I refused to take that test, so they just sent a letter to my parents stating that I was not ready, to drive, which, even now I'm not ready. But, another interesting thing was that I had computer graphics. I didn't care about this class, and the teacher was a snobbish fucking cunt. She was a cunt and a half. A mega cunt. And I let her know it. So I skipped her class and her class only for 10 school days straight. I walked down to the lake behind the school and just hung out, or I hung out in the bathrooms till that class was over. I just didn't feel like going. And she asked me where I was. I said, I was around. She's like, what do you mean around? I said, what do you care? You don't like me. She's like, that's not the point. So that argument went on forever and ever. I failed her course, but I got a C on the final exam. Whatever. Now, the interesting thing was I did a senior project. And I just thought it would be like a regular report with like videos and blah, 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 blah. So I chose euthanasia. I know. Funny, right? Because, you actually had to do something that was more physical, and they couldn't find me somebody to euthanize. So I had to change the topic altogether to censorship and show why I was either for or against, but they should know that I was definitely against censorship, so I focused strongly on anti-censorship. For all my efforts, I got a B on that presentation, my senior project. Now, this was 2001, 2002, so the fall of 2001, which was, yes, when the September 11th attacks occurred. And I remember I was getting on the bus coming back, or going back to Edgewater from Winter Park Tech, when I just heard all this talk on the bus's radio. And it said something happened in New York, 2 towers hit by planes. You know the story. But that's where I was when that happened. Then sometime later, my friends thought it would be funny to draw pictures of themselves shooting up people in the school. I blabbed it to somebody, they blabbed to the principal, they call me in, they call my friend in, they expel my friend, and then they commend me for helping to save the school from a terror plot. So that was the special recognition that I got. I mean, they didn't recognize me at the graduation ceremony for that. I just walked up on stage in the spring of 2002 and took my diploma. Said, yeah, I'm finally glad to be out of high school. But, yeah, there's my academic history. Now, I would love to further my education, but I never have enough money. Guess I should start saving up. Alright, we're done here. Peace.